Hello, good morning. It is a very good morning here. Well, it's the dark good morning here from the UK. It's the cricket show is back. Before we get into the show, I just wanted to pay our own little tribute from the Desi Sportscast to the fallen heroes of the helicopter crash, General Bipin Rawat, the Chief of Defence Staff, who we lost this week, and his wife and colleagues, and it was a sad day for the country, and we pay our homage and respect to the fallen. So I thought I'd just give a little tribute to them, and that they will be never forgotten, and we thank them for their service. After that, let's get on with the cricket show. And it has been a while, so, and you're not here to see me. There's only two people you're here to see. Let's get them on the show. The name on whose behalf we are here, Prasen. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hi Bharat, doing really well. Been quite some time since we caught up, so good to be back. Been a lot of cricket actually that's happened since we last spoke, so looking forward to this show.
Yeah, it'll be good to catch up. And of course, Shashwat from the beautiful city of Nagpur is joining us again. As Good to see you, Shashwat. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's been quite a while since we've last spoken, so obviously lots to discuss and lots that has happened since we last spoke.
Indeed, I can't remember the last show. Obviously, it was before the T20 World Cup, and we know what happened there. And it's down to me actually. The show's not happened, so it's my fault. So apologies for that. But it's really good to have you back on talking about uh, cricket on all formats actually that's happened in the recent past. But before we get into that, let's let everybody know what you guys have been doing. No doubt with sport of all kinds that you cover, you must be really busy in the work that you do. Prasan, you've got a big day today. Verstappen or Hamilton?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've made my intentions pretty clear when I've said that I support Verstappen all the way.
Oh
I just feel
dear.
that just like how CSK and MI have dominated IPL, Hamilton's dominated Formula One for way too long, and it's about time that the sport gets a new winner. There isn't long until Hamilton probably hangs up his boots in probably a year or two, and before that, if we can see Max Verstappen win his first title, he'll make next season even more better. And I think Drive to Survive is going to be a lot more fun if Verstappen wins at this time. So I'm really excited. It's actually been a long time since Hamilton has been challenged throughout the season, not just in a race or two. So I'm really pumped up that Verstappen's got pole. Unfortunately, it's on softs, but we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, I believe that's a bit. I mean, I'm not into F1. I did get into F1 a little bit through I think it's Amazon or Netflix series, but I do
Yeah.
find it a little bit boring. But I think there'll be the biggest audience for a long time watching the race today. Obviously, Hamilton being from the United Kingdom, there's a lot of interest here, and Formula One is big here.
Yep.
Shashwat, any interest in Formula One, or you
No,
like me?
whatever time I've gotten off from cricket, I have invested that into Indian football. So once you get into Indian football, there's simply no end. It is another ocean, just like Indian cricket. So I've restricted myself to these two sports for the time being, at least.
Do you know, I do feel for Indian journalists who have to follow cricket, which is a full-time job, and then Indian football, and it's not an easy job covering Indian football. We have the football show, and we talk about all the issues and what have you. But at least there's been goals this year, so that's a good thing. It's been entertaining, if nothing else.
Yes, and a bit of a yes, a bit of a no. I'd rather keep my thoughts to myself at this point in time because
No, but there is a good
obviously.
side to it. But anyway, let's get into the cricket chat. That's why we're here. And like I said, it's been a while since we've met. But I just wanted to get your thoughts. And you've had a lot of time to reflect, and no doubt I've seen some of the articles you've written as well on the back of the T20 World Cup. It's been a month or so. It seemed like a lot longer than that because of the New Zealand series in between as well. And people's memories are always on the last game or the last series. But Prasan, just going back to the T20 World Cup, a lot of hope. I think it was fair to say we thought we had a very good chance of winning, certainly getting to the final. Didn't even get into the semi-final. You've had a lot of time to reflect. You probably made up your mind as to what happened. What are your thoughts on what happened?
Well, I think it's something that's plagued Indian cricket for a long time. Is we didn't come up on top during crunch situations. I think a major part of that has sort of stemmed from how we performed before these big tournaments. In fact, the way that we won in the second test against New Zealand, and we put up barely a fight in the World Test Championship final. Again, indications that we've done well when the pressure hasn't been on us as a team. And collectively, I think performances were there here and there. A couple of performances that we witnessed to, but when Shaheen Shah Afridi puts up that sort of a show to start off the tournament, then there's not much that you can do to follow it up. So I think eventually it was a tournament which didn't really pan out the way it should have. Of course, at least in my view, I think this was the best team that we could go in with, but unfortunately, it just wasn't to be. And how much ever we look back at it, I think it's one of those tournaments which you'll need to forget in a jiffy. Otherwise, it's always going to come and bite you. And I mean, after what's all happened, of course, Kohli resigning from T20 captaincy, and the fact that he's been thrown out of ODI captaincy in some sense was just a footnote over a mail. I think a lot is happening in Indian cricket, but the T20 World Cup was certainly an aberration in terms of where Indian cricket is heading. A lot of people expected, I mean, like you mentioned, we expected to win the tournament, but we didn't even make the semis. So it was a disastrous performance in all sense of speaking. And uh, there's not much that we can do except move forward and hope that Rohit Sharma brings better things to Indian cricket and a
Well,
trophy.
Well, I was going to come to that, and it's definitely the announcement of Roy taking over ODI because you guys are on the inside. And are the stories true? And you alluded to how the announcement was made or not made, so we'll get into that in a little bit. But Shashwat, just reflecting very briefly again on the T20 World Cup, was it a simple case of win the toss, you win the game initially in the group stages, and that's where it went wrong for us in the first two games, or was it more than that?
So I've heard a lot of people talking about how the toss played a huge role. Obviously, the toss was an advantage at Dubai, considering that Dew usually had a part to play and that the wicket used to be a little tacky at the start of games, which made batting a little difficult. But I would want to say that it wasn't really the case of us losing the toss as much as we were very poor with the bat, because the stats say that of the last 15 to 18 games that have been played in Dubai, the night games, that is, only one team has won batting first, and that was the Chennai Super Kings in the IPL final. Thing that happened with the Chennai Super Kings in the IPL final was they knew that they needed to get a score that would account for whatever due that came in, etc., etc. So, considering the kind of resources that we had with the bat, irrespective of how many wickets we lost against Shaheen Shah Afridi and in the power play, I still think we had our approach all wrong. I've been saying this for the past year and a half that we have been a little too conservative in T20 cricket, especially in T20 internationals. And we've tried to stack our side with too many anchors who have very good numbers on paper, but don't really work in harmony as much. Each of them is a very, very good batter, and each of them is a mainstay of their respective IPL sides because the entire batting lineup revolves around them. But in an Indian setup, you can't really have the batting lineup revolving around everybody. I think we couldn't really identify the one person around whom the rest of the batting had to revolve. And in that process, there was a massive lack of clarity in terms of the roles that each had to perform. And even though I had expected us to get into the semi-finals based on the strength of the other teams in our team, in our group, and the presence of match winners that we had, it wasn't really a surprise the way we played against New Zealand, especially after what happened against Pakistan, because that Pakistan game opened up wounds. It told us it basically. So I'm not a huge fan of the regime that has gone by and of the chopping and changing that they do, especially in limited overs cricket. And when once they decided to push Ishan Kishan up to the top of the order at the expense of Rohit Sharma, who had before that game been the only batter to have struck at more than 140 in the first innings of a T20 innings since the start of 2020, was very, very perplexing. There have obviously been a lot of reports saying that it was his decision, a lot of finger pointing, but then again it all stems from a lack of clarity. And I really hope that this T20 series against New Zealand is the start of more clarity being given to these players, because if more clarity is given to these players, we can definitely implement the ultra aggressive approach that is needed in T20 cricket. Having said that, Kohli had during the England series in March said that India wanted to embrace a more attacking style, but saying that 4 months before a T20 World Cup, and then having this constant chopping and changing, which does not really give the players the freedom to actually express themselves. That is something that I don't think will continue this time out, because Dravid and Rohit Sharma have both been very vocal in saying that they want to give they want to provide faith. They want to invest in the players and give them the faith that they will not be dropped if they do what is the right thing for the team. And I think that kind of security is very important when you play this style of game, because if you look at teams that have been this ultra aggressive, have used this ultra aggressive approach in T20 cricket, you talk about the West Indies in 2016, or you talk about how England play their cricket, there are hardly any changes to their batting lineup. They identify their top seven, they stick with their top seven irrespective of whatever happens. And if they don't perform, then they take calls after a tournament or after a particular cycle has ended. Perhaps the West Indies bore the brunt because they invested a little too much in players that were a little too old,
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
have now found out. But then again, that is a philosophy that usually works. That is a philosophy that worked for Indian cricket as well. If you go back to the 2007 T20 World Cup, the 2011 World Cup that we won, the 2013 Champions Trophy, there were hardly any changes. Everyone knew what they had to do. You had Joginder Sharma knowing that he was going to bowl at the death. A lot of people tell me that that was just dumb luck that India won. It wasn't. Joginder Sharma also bowled the final over against Australia in the semi-final. People forget that, and then he bowled the final over in the final. So a lot of it stems from trust. Rohit and Dravid have been making the right noises, and hopefully this can be the start of something special in Indian cricket.
Well, as everybody knows, this time next year we'll have another T20 World Cup winner. So it is another big year for T20 cricket, and we'll talk about the series that's happened straight after against the Kiwis, because that is the start of the preparations for next year. But just very quickly, yes or no answer, Prasan. Did the best team win the tournament?
I think so. Australia were obviously going to be one of the favorites to win it, apart from India and England. So I think Australia, England, and India were the top three for me, and Australia deservingly won the tournament after playing some really good cricket.
And Sheshwat, there was the end of an era, the one that we knew about, not that we heard from the media or an email that was sent, but the end of the Kohli Ravi Shastri era. Obviously, Ravi's taking a bit of a sabbatical now for 6 months, just to refresh the batteries. I'm sure we'll see in the commentary box soon. Kohli is going to carry on playing, well, Test cricket and ODI cricket if he's selected now that he's not captain, and we'll get into that a little bit because I've got my own views on that one, and I'll share those, what I think about that decision. How do you look back on them? Or because there seemed to be afterwards that they were being judged on their ICC performances a lot. Obviously, maybe because that was the last tournament they were together. But overall, how do you look back on that partnership, that management?
I think that partnership worked very well in Test cricket, although the ICC World Test Championship final was perhaps the exception to the norm. And the thing is, it was quite a big exception, and that is why their tenure will obviously be defined by something like that. Plus, so obviously, for people who follow football as well, you always judge a manager eventually by the number of trophies they've won, irrespective of what they built. That is something that you need to take into account. You can't just say because a manager has won one trophy that he is a greater manager than somebody else, but you have to look at everything collectively. So from that perspective, the fact that we've had three very, very, I would term them shocking performances in crunch situations. You talk about the 2019 World Cup semi-final, the World Test Championship final, and the T20 World Cup, the first two games especially. So I think there is a little bit that both of them would work. If obviously both of them are given a choice to go back in time and correct something, these will be the three things that they would want to. Having said that, wins in Australia is something that no other team has previously achieved. So kudos to them for having achieved that. And in all likelihood, with the way England are playing, we will be winning that Test series as well. So from that perspective, red ball cricket wise, I think they've done well. They've ensured that India has stayed at the top. In terms of white ball cricket, this constant chopping and changing, this lack of communication, the numerous reports that come out every month, you have a different report saying why a particular player was dropped. I heard a couple of days ago where Ravi Shastri was talking to one of the leading publications in India, and he said that he didn't want three wicket keepers in the squad. Either one of Ambati Raidu or Shreyas Iyer could have been included in the 2019 World Cup squad. But I think this is a little bit of finger pointing, because I can't come to grips with the fact that the coach wasn't consulted before a team for the World Cup was selected. So I don't think we've really heard the end of a few controversies that happened during controversy as in selection controversies that happened during their time. And one thing I know for a fact that they would have wanted to change was the number of reports that kept coming out of the dressing room. I don't think that was the case before this era took over. I think this trend started off from the Kohli and Anil Kumble fallout. This basically increases a bit of insecurity. You then don't know if the coach actually trusts you or the captain actually trusts you, because in the media there is something else going on. So I think that is one thing that was a little was something that made me question what was actually happening in the dressing room. But as far as results in bilateral series are concerned, I don't think there is much more that they could have done.
Prasen, where do you stand on this argument that the ICC performance under their leadership, like Sheshwat quite rightly says, was poor, for want of a better word? I mean, like he says, we lost in the semi-finals. We got to the final of the World Test Championship, but the performance wasn't there. We were expecting a bit more, but then again, you can understand the conditions and make a sort of mitigation in terms of that one-off game. But the T20 World Cup, is it right that we put emphasis on that rather than the bilateral series and the incredible performances, like that's what the game alluded to?
If I can just diverge a little and give you an example, ever since Neeraj Chopra won the gold medal for the country in the Olympics, he's the most searched, person on Google, an Indian person on Google. But if you look at what he's done after that, no one really cares. So what that I mean, people don't know that he's taking part in these other tournaments, the nationals, and he's taking part in the Federations Cup. What that means to say is India is a very result-oriented country, and unfortunately, at the pinnacle of all of these results are obviously the World Cups, the World Test Championships, and whatnot. And in some sense of speaking, obviously those count a lot for obtaining your analysis of where a team has come from, or where the captain is, or where the coach is. What's important to understand, and this has got nothing to do with my I honestly do rate Kohli as an extremely good player, but obviously his results in terms of captaincy aren't there for any of us to see. Beat the IPL, beat the Indian team. So it's very harsh, obviously, in terms of saying that it's completely on them, because ultimately cricket is an 11-man sport, and of course it goes beyond that when substitutes come into play. So sometimes situations haven't really helped us out, especially in terms of the WTC final. Like you said, the conditions here as well. Some matches we were blown away against Pakistan, and I mean in some of the other matches we just couldn't do anything else apart from succumbing to a better opposition, even in the bilateral. So I think it's very harsh to put the blame on two people. It's not like Kohli got everything wrong. I think to see where they've got the test side, from where they were back when they took charge to where the team is right now. To see someone like Mohammad Siraj coming up the ranks, it's a combined effort. The captain and coach also have a lot of credit that needs to be given to them. So it's really unfortunate that they haven't managed to win much, but to see how the team's character has come up, I think what they've done is they've molded this team into a championship winning side. And I wouldn't be surprised for one if Rohit Sharma doesn't win us the title. I mean, he's obviously an extremely good captain, but eventually, like I said, it all depends on the team, and each performance or each individual has to perform on that given day. So If that doesn't happen, you can't win matches, you can't win championships. So hopefully, this ushering of a new era under Rohit and Rahul stays. But then again, I'm not really sure that they're looking at it as a long term project, simply because let's not forget Rohit Sharma isn't in his 20s. He's 1.5 years older than Virat, if it's worth anything to discuss. So in some sense, they aren't looking at it in a long term prospect. Instead, that it's more of a stopgap solution, and they're looking at it where they really want results. They want to prove to the world that India can win these tournaments, and they're hoping the five-time IPL winner and the guy who's had all the success in the world does it for the Indian side. So if it happens, there won't be anyone happier than me. But then again, I don't think. I honestly think Kohli and Shastri have done a lot for this team for which they don't get enough credit.
I agree. I agree. And from what you say, the focus is now on a little bit on the white ball cricket, just to turn that record around. But Shashwat, when we look back on this era, and do you agree with Shashwat that he and Kohli made a team that was one of the best, not just in Indian cricket history, but world cricket history in terms of the Test performances?
Uh, I'd not go as far as saying that it was one of the best ever teams in world cricket, because obviously we won a couple of times in Australia. We are on the verge of winning a series in England, but apart from that, we've not yet won in South Africa and New Zealand. So obviously, no other Indian team has ever done it before. But if we are talking about the greatest team to have ever existed in world cricket, I think all four. I think it should that should be a basic criteria for a team to, especially from Asia, to have won in all four of these countries. So I'll not buy into that narrative of saying that this is the one of the greatest teams ever in world cricket. As far as Indian Test teams are concerned, yes, I think this team is up there because no other team had won a series in Australia, and to do it twice in a row, especially the second time with so many players injured. We were literally one injury away from forfeiting a game, or getting Kartik Tyagi to play his first Test match. So for us to be in that kind of a situation and then actually win that too at the Gabba, I think that puts this current Test team into perhaps the top three Test teams to have ever played cricket for India. As far as world cricket is concerned, I'll not really buy into that argument that this is one of the best ever teams to have played world cricket.
But I think we can all agree that it has been a golden era of Indian cricket in terms of the red ball, um, and it stands on par with anything that we've done in the past. And I think we will look back as these two led the country during that period in maybe a better light as we go through the years. But let's look forward to the future now and the new partnership under um, Coach Dravid and Rohit Sharma. And it started off with a series against New Zealand, which is not the biggest one that you can hope for after the disappointment of the T20 World Cup. Prasen, how did that series go for you? And did you learn any lessons, or is it too early in terms of how Rohit and Dravid will take this team forward, not only in red ball cricket, but white ball cricket?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a series win, a series whitewash, in fact, is something that's obviously a very, very good result, irrespective of it being against whichever opponent. And I mean, New Zealand obviously did come here and they weren't equipped with the best players, of course, in terms of players who could perform in India because of the experience that they had in the squad. And to start off the series, with the way Bhuvneshwar Kumar got Daryl Mitchell out, but then I still felt that the bowlers had a lot to prove at the end of the series. I wasn't too satisfied with the way the bowlers went on, except for the last game, of course, where we skittled them for under 115, something on 111, if I'm not wrong. But otherwise, I think the batting looked fantastic. Rohit Sharma obviously starting off really well, then getting half centuries in the last two games. So I think overall, like I said, in my opinion, if anyone captains this Indian team, we have a good chance of winning. Simply because of how strong this Indian team is, especially in bilaterals. And unfortunately, that just hasn't translated into good results in the World Cup or the ICC event. So I'm very confident of what we are going to see under Rohit and Rahul. I think they're really different people when compared to Shastri and Kohli, at least of what we've heard. Obviously, we haven't really in the scheme of things, but uh, comparing the duo, I think it's easier to say that Rohit and Rahul probably will be a lot more, will have a lot more trust in the players, and in some sense, I think players will have more security about their roles. They'll know what to do. There won't be too much of chopping and changing like we've seen in the past. So good that we've started off on a fantastic note. I think a good 3-0 series, T20 win, and then a massive win in the second test, I think are certainly good signs of what's to come. But again, I won't be surprised if we see a different captain once the T20 World Cup gets done, because this certainly isn't a long-term project in my eyes. So if we see someone like KL Rahul and then Rishabh Pant coming up in the next year, maybe in 2023 or early 2024, then I think that's what Indian cricket needs, rather than Rohit Sharma probably continuing for like 3-4 years, given that he's obviously in his early 30s or maybe 35-ish age right now.
And we've just had a comment from Raj Seksaria. He agrees with both of you. I think you both said it. That it's about trust. Indian players were never sure about their spot in the playing 11 under Virat's captaincy, let it be IPL or any other series. So I think it's something that you think will change now under Coach Dravid and Captain Rohit. Sheshwat, in terms of the Test cricket, let's forget the T20 series because there was a few players missing, rested, what have you, and after the T20 World Cup, it's not going to have the same impact. But just talking about the two Test matches and the performance, it was good to see the Gujaratis on show for me, for both sides. So that was good to see. But it's a victory at home now, just guaranteed because of the pitches we're going to play. I mean, it should have been a whitewash, like Prasen says. But these spinning tracks, what did you make of the Test series and the pitches?
So I think I can probably say that there aren't many teams in world cricket that know how to play spin at this point in time, and I think a lot of that blame has to be attached to T20 cricket, where spinners don't actually look to spin the ball. They are just a slower version of fast bowlers. They come in from a shorter run up, and everybody tries to dart the ball in. So that has basically uh, reduced the art of playing spin bowling as it once was. Because if you see, even India aren't comfortable when the pitches are turning, and had it not been for Mayank Agarwal's efforts in the first innings, all of our other illustrious batters were dismissed by Ajaz Patel quite cheaply. So as long as we keep playing on these pitches, we have the batting to be in the game, but we have the bowling that is way better than any other team out there. Because if you look at it, Akshar Patel on these wickets is literally unplayable at times. Same with Ravindra Jadeja, and I have not even mentioned Ravichandran Ashwin so far. So that tells you the kind of depth we have on spinning tracks, especially at home. As far as the batting is concerned, I think we have become such a dominant force at home, because a lot of other teams have really, really gone backwards in terms of how they play spin bowling. Even if you look at the first test, New Zealand weren't very good against the spinners, especially once we started to apply pressure on the final day. There wasn't as much happening on that track, but still New Zealand got into a position where they needed their 10th wicket partnership to bat more than 50 deliveries to save the test. So spin batting
Just a
against
quick
spin.
question on that one. If Virat was captain, do you think we would have won that Test match?
I think it's pretty difficult to say. There wasn't a lot of help for the bowlers first and foremost. Uh, Plus, you can always argue that perhaps a different captain. But then again, if we had a different captain, we would have won the T20 World Cup as well. So I think that is not a discussion that we should be investing time on. There were a couple of things. Ajinkya Rahane could have gone back to his fast bowlers a little earlier, especially once Somerville had begun playing the spinners well. That change, that decision to go to the pacers and ask them to bowl short after lunch was perhaps, say, in hindsight, obviously 5 to 7 overs a little later. But then again, I can't really fault the way India bowled. They tried their heart out on a wicket that wasn't very responsive, and they came very close to winning the game.
But in terms of the players that came out of it, and there was obviously the squad that's been picked since then, and we'll talk about the series coming up. The opening partnership looked very solid and good in terms of KL and Rohit. Is this the future as far as you see it, Prasen?
I think so because once Kale and Rohit are there, it's very hard for anyone else to get a look in. In fact, Mayank unfortunately missed out on the last time, and Kale Rahul came in and he grabbed the opportunity with both hands. And I think right now Kale and Rohit both are all three format players, and Kohli has emphasized on that quite a bit, saying that he trusts these two to really open the innings and take the game forward. So moving ahead, I'm honestly very chuffed for Mayank Agarwal, and the way that he scored those runs, I think it was fabulous to watch. His technique, his approach to batting, I think, is a great sight. And unfortunately, he hasn't got as many opportunities. I think he's someone in the mold of Robin Uthappa, but of course, he's got a lot more opportunities than Uthappa did. But once Rohit and KL Rahul are back in, like in the case of South Africa, again, Mayank Agarwal will have to sit on the benches. But yeah, going forward, I think that's going to be the template where Rohit and Rahul open, followed by Kohli, Surya, whoever else is there. Shreyas Iyer, of course, now probably has done hopefully enough to keep Rahane out of the side. I think there's no bigger advocate of Rahane needing to get out of the test side than Shashwat. I think he's made it quite obvious that he hates Rahane as much as anyone can hate anything else. At least Rahane's presence in the test side, and
Shashwat,
I
isn't he
mean,
unbeaten as a captain?
Pardon?
Isn't he got a perfect record as captain?
Not a perfect record. He has a couple of draws in there.
Well, he's not lost.
Yes, he's not lost, but he can be a part of an illustrious list of Indian cricketers who have played their last test as captain. So positives all the way.
But I was well. I was going to talk about Rohit, but you bring that up. Let's carry on with that conversation. Percent. Do you think Rahane and Pujara deserve to be in the A squad in the squad for South Africa?
I think Pujara still does because what I've seen of Pujara since the last time we went to Australia is he has changed his approach in a sense that he is a little bit more attacking than he was earlier. I think he's scoring his runs a little bit more. He's trying to score runs at least, which is a positive sign. The only problem with Rahane is he hasn't really scored runs, and as much as Kohli keeps saying it's outside noise, and that's what I find perplexing in Indian cricket is every captain is trying to be a philosopher. They're not giving cricketing reasons to say why they're dropping a player, that they're terming it a niggle. It was pretty obvious for us, wasn't it? Just before the second test rolled on, that if there was a way that Rahane wouldn't play the test, it would be because of an injury. And when the man's running out and carrying drinks, I don't think the hamstring niggle is something that was in picture. And it's quite sad to see that they can't be open. That's something that we should certainly learn from Australia and England, where they're very open about their team combination, the way certain players fit in. That's something that needs to come into Indian cricket. And I think with Rahane, the case is very simple, where he's not scoring enough runs. As much as he says that he's making contributions, that Kohli is saying that he's making contributions, I don't think he is. When someone like Shreyas Iyer is scoring the runs, he is, and Hanuma Vihari is also waiting for an opportunity. Of course, now Jadeja is as good to be in the top five even, for batting side. So
In Test
I think
cricket?
it's high time we bid. Yeah, absolutely. I think Jadeja has transformed into a marvelous Test cricketer, especially with the bat. The way that
No, but in
he's
the top
really
five, you
transformed
were
his
saying.
batting. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I would certainly play Jadeja maybe at five and get Rishabh Pant to come in at six. I mean, if that's something that we need, if we can't fit in Rahane, maybe get in Vihari. I mean, I'm saying obviously we wouldn't play him ahead of Vihari, but if Vihari does not fit into the side, then I think Jadeja is good enough to be a number five, number six Test batsman and batter, and the way that he's gone about his batting in recent times. So I really feel it's time we look past Rahane because as much as he's done for the Indian team, he hasn't scored runs at all in the recent past. And if you don't score runs in Test cricket, then you certainly don't deserve a spot in the side. So we need to look past Rahane, and hopefully this tour of South Africa, if Rahane plays. And if he doesn't score runs, that should be the end of it. And I think very similarly is going to be the case with Ishant Sharma as well.
Well, I'm not going to ask you about Rahane. We know where you stand, Shashwat. But Rajas said that it's high time we should bid farewell to Pujara as well. Because I was surprised he was taken to South Africa. He's under pressure as well. What are your thoughts on him?
So I'll just want to refer to one point Prasen made about Australia and England being a little more forthcoming with their selections. I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of England fans wanting an explanation of why both Broad and Anderson didn't play at the Gabba. So as far as selection is concerned, I think there is no right way per se, especially in the social media era, for actually dropping a player. Or because in some team environments it might make a lot more sense to say that a person has a niggle and then quietly get them away from the firing line, whereas on some other occasions it might be better to bluntly say that this X person is simply not good enough to make our 11. So it is my personal opinion that you have to evaluate all those things on a case to case basis. But I firmly believe for people like Pujara and Rahane who've been playing test cricket for the past 10 years, and for them to continue to be in the team just so the Indian team management can ignore the outside noise, is something that doesn't really sit well with me.
But this goes back to what you were saying, that you think it'll be different under Coach Dravid. So do you, in terms of player retentions and being stubborn, being loyal, but is it too early to make that call?
So I think there is a very fine line between being loyal and being stubborn. Uh, we were loyal to Ajinkya Rahane when he was not performing in the India home series against England. We stuck through him. He did not have a great tour of Australia apart from that one century at the MCG, which you can argue actually tilted the series in our favor. That is something that is up for debate. But we have been loyal enough to Rahane and Pujara both.
No, but
So for
what I'm
people like,
saying is that you were saying that it'll be different under Coach Dravid and Rohit in terms of players will know their place. They'll, you know,
yes, I really hope. I think that is one of the major driving forces behind appointing Rohit Sharma as vice captain, because I think that is a clear enough signal to Rahane that you are no longer indispensable in this Indian side. And I still feel we will try and get Rahane and Pujara in our team just for the first game to kind of give them one final opportunity. That is the feeling that I am getting. I'll obviously, if I was the coach of the Indian team, I'll play Mayank at 3, Kohli at 4, and Shreyas at 5. For me, it is a no-brainer. But it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is how Rahul thinks. Rahul has worked with Rahane previously. He has seen Rahane when he was at the top of his game at the Rajasthan Royals. So I think there might be a temptation to just give both of them another go. As far as Pujara is concerned, I think Rahul Dravid might be a little more empathetic, because Rahul Dravid was, obviously, he was a much better batter than Pujara, but he performed a similar kind of role where he was sometimes shunted up to open, sometimes kept at number 3, sometimes pushed lower down the order. So Rahul knows what it is like to be that what you would term a glue in the batting lineup at number 3, soak in all the pressure. But the thing with Pujara is, whenever he has tried to score freely, he has looked good, but there is a reluctance on his hand to want to continue that approach in every game. So the thing is, whenever there is a little less pressure, or Pujara feels that he has reached a point of no return where everything can only go up, he opens up his shoulders and plays a lot more attackingly, which actually complements his game better at this point in time. But whenever there is a slight pinch, whenever Pujara feels that he is under pressure, he again goes back to those roots where he just wants to defend, defend, defend. And with the quality of bowling lineup that we are going to face in South Africa, and with the pitches that will accompany it, I don't think that is something that will work. And I hope that Rahul Dravid, that is, actually tries to get into both of Pujara and Rahane's minds, because as far as technical problems are concerned, they will be exposed at one point or another in international cricket. We've had loads of cricketers who had their technical deficiencies being exposed, but I think both of them have perhaps not been as strong temperamentally in the past couple of years, and I think that is what has really pulled them back, because this flirting outside off stump, playing around his front pad, isn't something that Rahane has started off in the past couple of years. Even when he began his career, there were these weaknesses were there. They weren't as prevalent as they are now, but they were there. Still, he found a way to score so many runs. He had an average in excess of 45 for quite a while. 40, let's put it at 40. It has been dropped down below 40 very recently. but there was something that made him successful at one point in time. So I think Dravid wants to work with him and Pujara to just see if they can get back to that level. But once he gets the first opportunity to understand that they are probably not at that level, I don't think it will be long before the likes of Mayank and Shreyas make their spots permanent in the side.
Well, considering how another player who shall not be named performed after you gave your thoughts, I bet Rahane turns up to be a higher scorer now in the Test series. But we'll see what happens if he gets the opportunity. But it is, like Shashwat said earlier, Prasan, place we've never won. We've come close, but not got over the line. South Africa is not the same team that it was a few years ago. Certainly not the team that we played 4 years ago. Will this victory? I mean, I'm expecting a victory for a start. Are you expecting a victory? And if we do get that win, will it stand up to scrutiny in terms of the team that we're playing? It is a huge achievement winning there.
I think any overseas win is certainly something that should that should be treated very seriously, because the Indian team for a long time has been one that has really depended on spin. With a lot of people have labeled the side as a team that depends on spin to win matches at home. But to see that the Pacers have developed into such a fearsome unit, the likes of Siraj, Bumrah, Shami, Ishan Sharma, Umesh Yadav. I think it's a great side that we've got right now. And if there's any bowling unit that can really match up to what South Africa or even New Zealand, Australia, England, anyone has to offer, I think it's this Indian team. And I certainly feel we have the side which can win the Test series in South Africa. Of course, it's going to come with a whole lot of challenges of being in that 44-day bubble that they're going to start from December 16th. Um, so to get through that, I think and make sure that they get settled in, understand the conditions at hand, because as good as the bowlers are, the batters at too need to score runs, and that's something that's been missing in our middle order, apart from the series where Shreyas Iyer went really well. So it's going to be interesting to see how even the likes of Rohit Sharma, KL Rahul all adapt to the moving ball, seaming conditions in South Africa, and how they play out there, because how much ever the Indian bowling attack picks up wickets, it'll be as important that we negotiate the early moving ball, sort of set up a platform, because for the couple of months, for the last couple of series, we've seen that the middle order has struggled quite a bit. To begin with, Kohli has found getting to his century very very hard. It's been a long time coming. So not just Pujara and Rahane, but Virat Kohli will be under a lot of pressure himself to score runs. And of course, to keep, if Rahane is to play, I think that just means that someone like Shreyas Iyer might have to sit out. So Pujara and Rahane will need to make sure that they make this opportunity count if they play. Because if they are in the side and they don't score runs, it just means that they're going to be shown the door before the next series comes around. So I think it's a very important series in the context of how the Indian team shapes up ahead of the next series, because this is a very very big test. The New Zealand coming to India was almost a foregone conclusion, considering that we are very very formidable at home. So for us to go abroad and get tested against the South Africans in their backyard, I think will be a very very interesting challenge. And I feel it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot more interesting to watch than the New Zealand series
Yeah.
that was here at home. So, very excited for it. Honestly, I hope Kohli gets his 100, because it's been a long time coming and people can't stop talking about it back home. So, if he gets to his 100, I think that's at least a conversation we can evade.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward to that. I think the test, well, not think, I know the test has been put back by a week, so we've got a couple of weeks to build up to that, and we'll talk about that in a couple in future shows. But just bearing in mind the time, I just wanted to come back to this big announcement this week, and Raj says it. Finally, BCCI took the step of making Rohit Sharma the captain of white ball cricket. Better late than never. Shazwat, we talked about this, and like I said, there's a lot of topics to go over, but we just don't have the time today, and we'll save it for future. But just to end on this one, I disagreed with this. Obviously, the manner it was done, you could probably tell me differently if it was done differently. But even the decision to appoint Rohit, I don't agree with that. I mean, if you're building for the next World Cup 2023, so like you said earlier as well, or Prasan said earlier, he's older than Kohli. So if you're building something, is he the right person, or what seems to be the flavor of the month at the moment? Interim is the word. Is this what he is?
In my opinion, I think it was the right call to give Rohit Sharma the captaincy at this point in time, because Rohit at this juncture is at the peak of his powers across all formats. Before the England series, there was always an asterisk attached. Can he perform overseas? Can he bat at the top of the order? Can he play against the swinging ball? I think he has answered all of those questions. A couple of years before that in England, he had answered those white ball questions similarly, and he had done so very emphatically when he got those 500s at the 2019 World Cup. So, in my opinion, Rohit Sharma is at his absolute best at this point in time. And I personally feel that we have perhaps left it a little late to hand him over the captaincy. I feel this is something that should have happened a while back. But I am really happy that it has happened now. 2 years is sufficient enough time for Rohit to build the ODI team also to his liking, because you'd not want to be in a situation where in the middle of 2022 you feel that Virat Kohli is probably not doing the job as ODI captain, and then you want to change, because then Rohit would not have had the time to actually mold the team to his liking. So if you want to draw parallels, I think we can go back to how the whole 2011 World Cup cycle started. We had that series in Australia, the right at the start of 2008, if I'm not wrong, the Commonwealth Bank series that we won against Australia in the final. So before that series, there was a huge hue and cry around a few senior players who had been dropped, but the selection committee or the captain, whoever was in charge, took the bold call that we wanted to mold the team how MS wanted it by the 2011 World Cup, and we bore the fruits of it. So I think 2 years is a good enough time, and I think this decision has come at exactly the right time, both considering where Indian cricket is at the moment in terms of it needing a slightly newer direction, and in terms of where Rohit is as a cricketer, because at this point in time, for me at least, he is a much more valuable player than Kohli for India.
So yeah, I agree with a couple of points, but I don't agree with the conclusion that it should be Rohit. I agree that this is the time to mould an ODI team preparing for a home World Cup. But do you think Rohit is a player? I would have had him as vice captain, and a slightly younger person like a KL or Shreyas, or as the captain, building that team, because Rohit's got the opportunity to not only prepare for the T20 World Cup but build a team around that, and it would have given a little bit of leeway to a younger, slightly captain to build ODI team with the experience of having Kohli and Rohit in the team. But is that asking for too much? The egos would have not been able to handle that, Prasan?
Honestly, I think there's a little bad blood between Kohli and the BCCI, at least in terms of what we can see on the surface level. I mean, let's face it, right? I mean, Kohli has been the poster boy of Indian cricket for so long, and what he's done to Indian cricket, barring the fact that he hasn't won trophies, is he's got Indian cricket to the level where the team is really feared across formats. Of course, Dhoni won titles. Dhoni really started the whole criteria of India being considered as one of those fearsome teams. But Virat Kohli was the captain for so long, and it's really unfortunate that they just finished off his captaincy tenure, at least in the ODI format, with just a footnote over a mail. And that's not just something that sat well with me, simply because he obviously needs a lot more than that. In fact, there were some reports that even suggested that he was given a 48-hour window within which he had to make a decision to step down, and that didn't happen. Because of which the BCCI were forced to take this call. So
Why, why, why,
while
why,
it's
why was a decision needed around ODI captaincy now?
I think it's very simple that they don't want two captains. The BCCI just feels
Well,
that
they've still got
they
two
can do with
captains,
one.
haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the white ball formats, they didn't want one ODI captain separate and one T20 captain separate, because, I mean, if it was the case where, for example, in England, where Joe Root doesn't play as much T20 cricket and Morgan's leading the team, then that's okay. But here you're seeing both Rohit and Kohli will be playing T20 and ODI cricket. But now with all that's transpired and all that Kohli said post him resigning from the T20 captaincy, I have a feeling he's not going to play as many T20s, and that's why
Did
Rohit's
he
taking
resign
over. But
from the ODI?
yeah, I'm pretty sure he didn't resign from ODIs, but
Yeah.
he certainly resigned from T20s because actually, I mean, it's been pretty clear over the last 4 5 years that Kohli doesn't enjoy not 4 5 years, maybe 2 3 years, that Kohli doesn't enjoy T20s as much as he does with Test and ODIs. He probably isn't someone who favors the T20 format as much, and that's why I wasn't surprised when he resigned from RCB and the Indian team T20 captaincy. But the fact that he was, I like to put it as, he was thrown out of ODI captaincy. I think it was pretty clear from at least over the past 1 year that Kohli wanted to lead the side into the 2023 World Cup. But that's not happening because he's been asked to serve his notice period. Not even notice period. I mean, with immediate effect, he's been thrown out, and Rohit Sharma is leading the side. So as much as it's going to free him up as an ODI batter, as a T20I batter, and he can focus on the Test format, I still feel BCCI needed to treat him better, treat him as a captain for these many years a lot better than what they did. And I think Rohit Sharma being picked as captain is, like Shashwat mentioned, he's at the peak of his powers, there's no doubt. But I certainly don't feel like Rohit's going to lead the side for 2 years or more. And we're going to see someone like KL Rahul or Shreyas Iyer or Rishabh Pant coming and picking up that position.
This was my point. I think they should have gone, if they had to make a decision on ODIs, they should have gone down that route. But as Raj says, I don't think the greats like King Kohli would be able to play under KL. Does that apply for Rohit as well, Shashwat? We've got two big names
the,
that.
the ego equation, first of all, is something that we sitting on the outside can't really comment on, because that is something that happens inside the dressing room, and that is something that we try to decipher from the kind of decisions they take. Obviously, it will be hard for people like Kohli and Rohit to play under someone like KL, but also I think we are missing a very important point, or that's what, at least that's what I feel, is that BCCI over here has tried to cut its losses with Kohli as ODI or white ball captain. It has probably realized that he is not the right person to lead them into ICC tournament glory, and for that very reason, I think this is the right time to have given Rohit the captaincy in terms of ODI cricket. T20 World Cup, obviously, it is just a year away, so you didn't really have the luxury of grooming someone in that 1 year while also preparing a title winning team. So, from my opinion, I think they have selected the better captain of the two in terms of white ball cricket, and I think this is a real. Obviously, things could have been handled. Things should have been handled better in the way how Kohli was stripped, sacked, thrown out, all in inverted commas. You never know what actually happened, or stepped aside, whatever happened. Uh, Things could have should have been handled better, but in at the end of the day, I feel the better white ball captain has been given the reins. Plus, we are also ignoring that people like KL Rahul, Rishabh Pant, these people aren't really the finished articles as far as captaincy is concerned. KL Rahul, at least for me, has not really been a great captain for the Punjab Kings, because there have been 2 years where his batting approach has come under the scanner. If he bats like that in T20 cricket and ODI cricket for India, I think that is the worst thing that could ever happen to India, because KL Rahul is a genuine match winner. The more days he plays as anchor, he's actually curtailing his own match winning abilities. So I don't really know if Rahul has that leadership and batting, weighing up those things, balancing the act. I don't think he has figured that out yet. Pant, as we saw in the towards the end of the IPL, is prone to the odd mistake, because let's face it, this was his first full season as IPL captain. And Shreyas Iyer at this point in time doesn't really get into both of our white ball teams, or doesn't walk into both of our white ball teams. So that means the only other option is either to turn to Ravindra Jadeja or Jasprit Bumrah, people who haven't really been looked upon as captains, because
Yeah.
Bumrah has played under Rohit Sharma and will continue to do so this year. And Ravindra Jadeja, unless MS Dhoni decides to step away after just one game at Chennai, will be playing under MS for another season. So you don't really have these players having had a lot of experience. So from all the options that we had, looking at the 2023 World Cup, considering that it is in India, and considering that if it is in India, we will be the outright favorites to win it, irrespective of what anyone else says. I think the BCCI has just cut its losses, given the best white ball captain in India, that has not retired from international cricket. Let me correct myself. The chance to lead India to glory, and I think the timing of it is also right. If Kohli plays T20s, if Kohli, how much Kohli plays ODIs under Rohit remains debatable, but I can't really see us getting a better deal than Rohit Sharma as white ball captain at this point in time.
Well, as always, it's never boring with BCCI and some of the decisions they make, and we'll see what happens in the. There is, I think, three ODIs against South Africa coming up, so we'll see what happens in those as well. But before that, there's Test cricket to look forward to as well. So, um, absolutely fantastic catching up with you guys. I know you're both busy and you've got things to move on to, so and there's lots more to talk about, but hopefully we can catch up again next week and carry on this fantastic conversation. But for today, thank you so much for joining the show, and it's good to have you back on. Take care, guys.
Thank you, thank you. It was a pleasure being here.